The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent, Chapter 12, Secrets Beneath the Surface. The bell over the shop's front door jingled sharply, and Brody the locksmith stepped inside, his presence as gruff and no-nonsense as his reputation. He was tall, with a wiry frame and an unruly mop of silver hair that looked as though it hadn't seen a comb in years. His denim overalls bore evidence of years of grease, dust, and more than a few forgotten keyholes. Spinks, lounging on the counter, watched him with wide, curious eyes. "Morning," Brody grunted, squinting at Evie as though she were a particularly tricky lock. "You the new lady taking over Lizzie's place?" "That's me," Evie said, stepping forward with a tentative smile. "Evie Hutchison, thanks for coming by so quickly." Brody waved off her thanks with a dismissive snort. "Well, let's see this desk that's giving you trouble." Evie led him upstairs to the apartment, her boots clunking on the narrow wooden staircase. The late morning light streamed through the apartment's windows, illuminating Lizzie's eclectic collection of art and treasures. Brody glanced around, his gaze lingering on a macrame owl wall hanging. Lizzie had peculiar taste, he muttered. Evie smiled, running a hand along the banister. "It's growing on me." When they reached the roll-top desk, Brody let out a low whistle. "Well now, this is a beauty. They don't make 'em like this anymore." As he got to work on the lock, his toolkit spread out on the floor. Evie couldn't help but ask, "Did you know Lizzie well?" Brody shrugged, his gnarled hands deftly working the tumblers. "Well enough. She hired me more times than I can count, always losing her keys or locking herself out of the shop. But she was a good one, not like some folks in this town." He shot her a knowing look, but before Evie could press him for details, there was a faint click. "Got it," Brody said, stepping back with a triumphant grin. Evie's heart quickened as she opened the desk's roll top, revealing the tidy interior. Papers and ledgers were neatly stacked, but what drew her eye was a small wooden box tucked into the corner. It was simple, made of dark wood, but when she lifted it, it felt heavier than it looked. "What have we got here?" Brody asked, peering over her shoulder. "I'm not sure," Evie murmured, flipping open the lid. Inside, nestled in a velvet lining, was a small, irregularly shaped key. Its surface was rough and slightly tarnished, as though it had been hammered into shape by hand. "Well, that's a curiosity," Brody said, scratching his chin. "Doesn't look like it fits any ordinary lock." Evie frowned, turning the key over in her hand. "I'll figure it out eventually. Thanks again, Brody." As she walked him out, Brody gave her a final piece of advice. "You need anything else unlocked, you know where to find me. But if you're messing with old keys like that, I'd tread carefully. Sometimes they unlock more than doors." Evie chuckled nervously, but his words stuck with her long after he left. Later that evening, after combing through every lock in the shop and apartment to no avail, Evie found herself back in front of the roll-top desk. She placed the mysterious key on the desk's surface and stared at it, willing it to reveal its secrets. Her gaze drifted to the desk itself. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the kind of furniture that seemed to hold stories in its grain. Her fingers traced along the edges, and on a whim, she began searching for hidden compartments. "Come on, Lizzie," she murmured. "If you've got any secrets tucked away in here, now would be a great time to share." She tapped along the inside, listening for a hollow sound. Finally, her hand brushed against a faint seam along the back panel. Her pulse quickened as she pressed on it. With a soft pop, a hidden drawer slid open, revealing a single item inside. It was a book. But not just any book. Evie's breath caught as she carefully pulled it out. The massive grimoire was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its leather cover was cracked with age, its edges reinforced with tarnished metal bindings etched with intricate patterns. Across the front, 3 empty slots formed a triangular arrangement, as though they had once held something precious. The book exuded an almost tangible aura, a weight that wasn't just physical. Her stomach twisted with a strange mix of awe and unease. "What on earth are you?" she whispered, running her hand over the leather. At the center of the book's cover was a locking mechanism, a circular piece of metal with a keyhole. Evie's eyes darted to the hammered key resting on the desk. Could it possibly? She picked up the key and moved toward the book, her fingers trembling slightly. Just as the key hovered over the lock, a sudden chill filled the room. "Hello there," a voice drawled. Evie gasped. spinning around. There, leaning casually against the wall, was a man she'd never seen before. His clothes were simple, jeans and a long-sleeved shirt, his presence impossibly solid and yet undeniably wrong. Who are you?" she stammered. The man tipped an imaginary hat, his smile lopsided. "Name's James Edgar, and given what you've discovered there, it seemed like a good time to introduce myself properly." Spinks, perched on the windowsill, chirped happily and leaped to the floor, circling James's legs as though he were an old friend. Evie's mouth opened and closed, no words forming. James grinned. "Don't worry, Miss Hutchison. We'll have plenty of time to get acquainted. But for now, I'd say it's best if you leave the crypto-arcanum alone, at least until we've had a chance to get acquainted and you know what you're dealing with."